Is this working? Okay, it is. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Bolon Huang, an undergraduate of Media and Culture at Lancaster University in the UK. In today's video, we're going to look at the summary of the book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, chapters 15 to 18. The author of this book is called Oliver Wolfe-Sachs, a British professor, neurologist, and psychologist based in the States. And for those of you who haven't checked out my previous videos also about the summaries of this book, welcome to check them out over here. And now, without further ado, let's get started. Chapter 15, Reminiscence. Mrs. O.C., somewhat deaf but otherwise a fine old lady in her 80s, visited Sachs because of the music playing inside her head. She said that she kept on hearing the radio playing music, but it actually wasn't. So, to find out what's up, Sachs gave her an EEG, which showed spikes and sharps in the temporal lobes of the brain and was then found to have temporal lobe seizures as a result of small thrombosis, infarction in the right temporal lobe. And the songs that kept on playing in her head are Irish songs from her childhood, which Sachs considered as epileptic. Mrs. O.C. recovered by mid-April, and these songs disappeared. Mrs. O.M. also experienced similar things like Mrs. O.C., but on the other hand, she came to hate these songs, as they've been playing for years nonstop, and continued to get worse, so bad that sometimes she heard one or several songs at a time, which could be either orchestral choir or just random voices. And regarding her, Sachs says she has musical epilepsy. Then it was found that before Mrs. O.M. experienced these musical fits, she hummed them first, meaning they were unconsciously selected. But luckily, after she took anticonvulsants, she got her problem fixed. Chapter 16, Incontinent Nostalgia. In the beginning of the chapter, Sachs introduces us to a couple of effects of post-encephalitic patients on L-Dopa, which is a drug that is used to cure Parkinson's. They re-experience problems at the early stages of the disease. For example, respiratory crisis, oncologic crisis, iterative hyperkinesis, tics, and other symptoms like, there's a lot. So, myoclonus, sudden twitching or jerking, bulimia, an eating disorder, whereby people would eat lots and lots of food, polydipsia, a condition that makes you feel really thirsty due to a lot of trips to the toilet, and satiriasis, sudden increase in libido for men, and central pain. In other words, pain in the brainstem, and the spinal cord caused by dysfunction of the central nervous system, etc. Beyond that, patients would also experience reactivation of the abilities that were forgotten or suppressed, which is caused by sudden upsurge of memories. So in this chapter, Sachs brought up a case about a 63-year-old woman who had progressive post-encephalitic Parkinson's since the age of 18, and she was fluent in speech and movement and experienced psychomotor excitement, higher sex drive, with increased sexual memories and illusions, while she talked in slang. At one point, she even requested a tape recorder and recorded 30 songs and limericks. So then Sachs was like, okay, we have to cut some L-Dopa because woman couldn't remember anything she did, although her speaking remained fluent. Forced reminiscence, in other words, being forced to remember past events, causes migraines, epilepsy, and all types of crisis, which then leads to the excitation that causes the release of memories and thus make the patient re-experience or reenact the past. Chapter 17, A Passage to India. This story is about a 19-year-old Hindu girl called Bhagwahani P, who had a malignant brain tumor and went to Sachs Hospice in the year 1978. When she was 7, the tumor was removed, but at the age of 18, it came back again, more invasive, cancerous, and less removable. She experienced weakness and numbness on the left side, with occasional seizures and other problems. The tumor eventually grew into her temporal lobe, which increased her seizures and other symptoms like being in a dreaming state or a state of reminiscence, as she came up with visions of India, specifically people, landscapes, and houses. But in spite of all of this, she wasn't bothered with the symptoms at all. In regard to his diagnosis of Bhagwahandi, Sachs had a few assumptions. Firstly, about her temporal lobe seizures, visions like images and songs are usually fixed, but Bhagwahandi's were always changing. Second, steroid psychosis. Sachs gave her steroids to reduce cerebral edema, and patients on steroids are usually excited and disoriented. However, Bhagwahandi was peaceful and calm. And number 3, lastly, it's about her fantasies and dreams, which could also be seen in schizophrenics. And usually those are imagined, but Bhagwahandi's were all made up of real memories and occurred with awareness. Day after day, week after week, the visions became more and more vivid for Bhagwahandi, while lying down, eyes closed or open but unseeing, with a faint, mysterious smile on her face. And looking at her, Sachs' nurse said, "She's in another world." And Sachs asked, "What's happening, Bhagwahandi?" And Bhagwahandi said, "I'm dying, and I'm going back home." A week after Sachs asked her, she then lost her response to external stimuli. And 3 days later, she died. Chapter 18, the last chapter, The Dog Beneath the Skin. Okay, so this story is about Stephen D., a medical student, 22 years old, high on cocaine, PCP, and mainly amphetamines. One night, man dreamt that he was a dog with incredibly strong sense of smell. The next day he woke up, the dream turned into reality, as when he got tested, it was shown that he had an enhancement in color vision, memory, and smell. He could recognize friends, families, doctors, staff, shops, streets, patients, all by smell, including their feelings and emotions. And he even wanted to sniff and touch everything, but resisted when in front of others. Besides that, he found thought, abstraction, and categorization difficult. But 3 weeks later, he was back to normal again. Stephen D., by the time when Sachs finished writing this book, was already a doctor, said he was still nostalgic about the experience. Some see enhancement in smell as temporal lobe epilepsy, which is also related to paraphilia and perversions, according to Freud. Sachs says in the case of Dr. Stephen D., dopaminergic excitation from amphetamine, quite like post-symphatic patients on L-Dopa or what could also be seen in Tourette's, could potentially lead to hypersomnia. And about the importance of smell particularly, in this chapter, Sachs says, once there was a talented man who had a head injury which damaged his olfactory tracts, hence permanently losing his sense of smell, and the lad was petrified AF. Months later, smell came back due to his olfactory imagery and smell memory. It felt terribly real, but it didn't mean that his olfactory tracts actually recovered, but because those smells were only based on imagination. At the end of the chapter, psychologist Sachs states, the most important things in life are often the things we pay the least attention to, or at the very least, what we consider as normal to us. And that's it, guys, the summary of the book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, chapters 15 to 18. Want to learn more about this book? Then check these videos out over here of the summary I did for the previous chapters of The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. And that's it for today. Don't forget to comment below, share this video, turn on notifications, and subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.